Hey, how's it going? My name is Wes. Welcome back to another lesson. In today's lesson, we will go over another blue vocabulary lesson. Now, as you can see, I've divided this topic into two different parts. So today we will look at part number 1 of the topic travel in Spanish. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. All right, so I think the first word or the first verb that we should learn is to travel. So to travel, the verb that we use for to travel in Spanish is
viajar, viajar.
And as you can see, this verb ends with AR. So now that we know this verb, we can conjugate it into saying, for example, I travel, or you travel, or we travel. So for example, if you would want to say I travel to Europe, you could say
Viajo a Europa. Viajo a Europa.
or we travel to Europe.
Viajamos a Europa. Viajamos a Europa.
Or,
Viajan a Europa.
which is ustedes viajan a Europa. So you travel to Europe.
Viajan a Europa.
So the verb for to travel in Spanish is
Viajar. Viajar.
now the word for the trip in Spanish is
El viaje.
so it's very similar to the verb viajar, to travel. So the trip is el viaje.
El viaje.
Alright, so then depending on your trip and where you're going, you might want to catch a flight. Now, the word for the flight in Spanish is
El vuelo. El vuelo.
and of course, when you have the flight, you are in the airplane.
El avión. El avión.
The word for the airport in Spanish is actually quite similar to the Spanish word, which in Spanish is
El aeropuerto. El aeropuerto.
the passport is
El pasaporte. El pasaporte.
and next to the passport, you also need a boarding pass if you want to hop on a plane. So the word for the boarding pass is
La tarjeta de embarque. La tarjeta de embarque.
the boarding pass, or the card, la tarjeta, the card or the pass to embark. Alright, the next word is the gate number. So when you're at the airport, for example, and you want to ask for the gate number, then the word for the gate number is
El número de puerta. El número de puerta.
the gate number. Alright, now another word that I think is very helpful to learn in Spanish is how to say the ticket. And in Spanish, there is actually a couple of different ways of how to say the ticket. It depends on the country or the region that you're in. A common way of saying the ticket is
El billete. El billete.
but sometimes you could also hear
El boleto. El boleto.
so el billete or el boleto. Or the third way of saying the ticket, which is more similar to how we say it in English, is el tiquete. El tiquete. So this might be more easy to mesmerize. So we have el billete, el boleto, and el tiquete. They all mean the ticket, and all of them are correct to use. Now, if you want to say I have a ticket, then you can use the verb tener to do so. So you can say tengo, which is a conjugation of the verb tener. So I have, yo tengo un billete.
Tengo un billete.
Or tengo un boleto, or tengo un tiquete. I have a ticket. Now, if you don't have a ticket yet and you want to buy a ticket, you can say I want to buy a ticket.
Quiero comprar un boleto.
Or quiero comprar un tiquete. Quiero comprar un billete. I want to buy a ticket. And here again, what's important to notice is that we are using two verbs next to each other. So, querer and comprar. And in this case, quiero or querer as the verb is the auxiliary verb. So we use one auxiliary verb to help the other verb, comprar. So, quiero comprar un boleto. I want to buy a ticket. Alright, and then the last phrase that we will learn in this first part of the topic travel is how much does the ticket cost? How much does the ticket cost?
¿Cuánto cuesta el billete? ¿Cuánto cuesta el billete?
Or cuánto cuesta el boleto? Cuánto cuesta el tiquete? So cuánto cuesta? How much does it cost? Alright, and that's already it for this first part of the topic travel in Spanish. I'm trying to keep these blue vocabulary lessons a bit shorter so that it's not too much to learn all at once. And as always, I also have a reference sheet of today's lesson available for you if you want to practice with these words and phrases. Alright, that's it for today's lesson. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful. I hope you got something out of this. And of course, I hope to see you in the next lesson. Adios.